Hey guys, welcome back to Zupi the Autotelic Mindset podcast. I'm here with Peter Disera, professional mountain biker and 2020 Olympic Games competitor. Peter, welcome, and thanks for coming on board here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm a broken record, and I say this all the time, and I know you guys have your busy schedules, but it's for you to make time to come on here. Really appreciate you doing that for us, because I know you're in a bit of a training cycle right now.
Yeah. I'm down in Southern California right now doing a bit of a endurance block, and a little tired today, a little active recovery day, so some time to squeeze this in. But the sun's shining and it's been good training thus far, so I can't complain.
Nice. So I'm just kind of reading your bio here, and it's kind of cool. You're an Ontario boy from Kitchener.
Yeah, born in Kitchener. I grew up in Bradford and then moved north of Barrie to a place called Horseshoe Valley, sort of mid. I'm actually based out of Victoria, BC, on Vancouver Island.
Gotcha.
That's where I live now, and then that's been since I graduated school. Yeah.
Nice. So we'll kind of get into it here. I kind of touched base with before we kind of hopped on here with the sport you're doing and being from kind of the area you are. I mean, for myself growing up, you have like hockey, soccer, lacrosse. How is it one gets into the sport of mountain biking? And I know you've done other sports like skiing and other types of biking sports. So how do you get into something like that, especially at a younger age, versus these more, let's say, popular sports like hockey and soccer and all that stuff?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I played all the team sports and stuff like that through elementary and high school. I played football through high school. But then, sort of when we moved from Bradford to Horseshoe Valley, had a buddy of mine at the new school we were attending mentioned come out to these Wednesday night races at Hardwood Hills, or what's now Hardwood Ski and Bike. So just like a weekly casual grassroots local race event, and started doing those on our like cheap entry level bikes. I don't know, I couldn't really even consider them to be mountain bikes at this point, but started doing that, started doing well, and then sort of from that point forward, year over year, just cascaded another level higher. At the time as well, we were getting involved in that sort of the first like 2 or 3 years. I split my time between alpine skiing, ski racing in the winter. I also was an instructor, and then mountain biking throughout the summer. So it quickly took our summers over, and then became more of a thing and more of a identity piece, sort of like with the family, traveling around to certain race events, and my brother starting to race as well. So just kind of cascaded from there.
So your brother, he younger or older than you?
3.5 years younger.
So he's trying to maybe follow in your footsteps a little bit there.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, he's well established. So yeah.
Oh, that's cool. It's funny how I like how the family gets involved with that stuff. It always helps with the support of them. So when you're doing, like, as you kind of moved up the ranks, when does this actually become in your mind like, hey, I'm going to do this professionally, or just I'm going to do this, I'm going to try to make my way up the ranks through the different levels or age groups? When did that cross your mind?
Yeah, I mean, sort of at every level that I experienced success. So I started to be successful at that local race series. So then we went and started doing provincial level race series, and then became successful at those. And I started doing Canada Cup level race series, and then became successful at those. And then nationals, medal at nationals, went led to my first world championships. Did decent in my first year as a junior on the World Cup scene when this was back when they still had junior World Cups. Medaled as a junior at Junior Worlds in South Africa in 2013, and then that's when I got picked up by the Norco Factory team for the 2014 season. So that's when it became more of a professional style undertaking. But that was also the year that I started my undergrad. So, I mean, I never really got like 2 feet all in until the beginning of 2019 when I graduated school at the end of 2018. The beginning of 2019 when I was like, okay, yep, we're both feet in for the next year and a half leading into Tokyo. And yeah, everything was looking real good in February 2020 until it stopped.
Yeah, we'll probably get into that. But back to your school, like a lot of the athletes I talk with, like sometimes they're dual athletes where they have to make decision between a sport and they go one direction or the other. But for you, it sounds like you're always into the biking. But I mean, choosing like having to do your schooling, right? Like you could have put school easily on hold and kind of fast track this a little bit faster per se. So it seems like you kind of made an unconscious decision that you're going to finish your schooling. And once that's done, then I'm going to, like you said, dive 2 feet into this.
Yeah, I split my time pretty, like, I split my time like right down, not the middle, but basically did as little school as I possibly could while staying sort of like on track to graduate, and did as like most bang for my buck style training while I was in school in order to still be as fast as I could with as little time as I had available on the bike. And yeah, like dual athlete stuff wise, like yeah, I split my time sort of like early career and kept my whatever, kept my toes in sort of a bunch of different sporting pools, but like we'd have cross training seasons and do a bunch of Nordic skiing over the like winter holidays and whatnot. But yeah, just with how cross country mountain bike works and any of the sort of endurance cycling events work, like it's not a high impact sport and it's a very aerobic based system sport. So like time is king. So I always had to get creative and had a bunch of good coaches helping me through getting creative to get the most out of the little time I had.
Nice. Yeah, like when I talk to some of my athletes, I go through what I call the balance board. So you have your career, you have your personal development, you have, your health and wellness, and then your personal relationships. And I always say we're trying to balance this board as much as possible, but realistically, it's never fully balanced.
Mm-hmm.
But where do you put your time in? When do you spend that time there? And I think with education, obviously it's very important, but I mean, there's probably some stressful times for you, and you kind of touched on it with having coaches kind of help you throughout that process. But maybe talk a little bit about a little bit more how you time managed. Was there ever a point where you're like, I have to focus more on school, or I have to focus more on my sport, and all that kind of stuff? Kind of walk me through that a little bit.
Yeah, that was more on a micro level rather than like a macro level. Well, no, I guess it's kind of on both. So I definitely struggled for the first few years in my undergrad, just trying to figure that out. I had just come off of a massive high in 2013 where I was like one of the best juniors in the world and was, I mean, humbly was pretty untouchable within Canada. Like I won 4 national titles. I walked up to just with any race and just kind of took it to people. So coming out of that to then showing up late to my first semester of university because World Championships was at the beginning of September in South Africa, so I didn't show up until like 2 weeks in. So I missed orientation, I missed Frosh Week, I missed all of that, and just kind of walking in as like somebody who had done something special, but nobody gave a damn type of idea.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, it was kind of cool as well, because it was cool because I was like, okay, sick. Like I can just, like, my profs be like, where have you been? Or like, you missed all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I was racing bikes, but don't worry about it. Like, just tell me what I need to know. So yeah, and then I definitely struggled that first year, like being in residence. And I mean, I went to the University of Guelph, so we had proper winters. And unlike living in like Horseshoe Valley and stuff, where Nordic skiing and other forms of cross training were like readily accessible,
Yeah.
through my entire undergrad, my 5.5 years spent in Guelph, like I never got to do any cross country skiing or anything like that. I mean, there'd be time that I'd like use the athletic centers and try to put some time in the pool, or like obviously like, would use the gym and stuff like that. But yeah, splitting time, it just ended up coming down to cranking out miles on the trainer. So yeah, me in my res room hitting trainer miles like 7 to 9 p.m. and then going to bed, waking up for class at 8:30 and kind of going off. So I wouldn't necessarily say it was healthy, but I was trying to split my time evenly and do what I could through school, and sort of how first and second year in any program goes. It's you're forced to do a bunch of stuff that you like don't want to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was tough. But then once I got into second year, I actually messed up second year pretty good. So I decided to do a full course load and really overweight the fall semester so I could have a lighter spring semester, because there was always going to be racing in March and April and whatnot. So yeah, I overweighted that fall semester, didn't take any reduced course load, stayed full 6 engineering courses, 2 of which were like extremely time intensive. And yeah, after about 2 or 3 weeks in, sort of the like off season that we would have, and it was like, okay, time to start up training. And I was like, I can't, like, it just keeps getting busier and I can't. And now I'm like 6 weeks into the semester, and like the semesters are only 12 weeks plus exams. So I'm like, I'm just gonna tough this one out. Like, I guess I'll just lose a bunch of fitness and try to gain it back next semester. So I ended up, yeah, loading that front end of second year, and then having to take second semester of second year, I took it completely off. I took 3 online courses and moved to California for 4 months. So that was sick because I got to do some electives that I would have needed to do at a later time. Got to do them online. Was really bad at doing online courses. Learned a lot about myself in that. And then was able to devote my time. If in the fall I was 90% school, 10% training, that spring semester I was 90% training, 10% school. But that didn't work out because come July I popped. I had done too little throughout the fall and overloaded my spring to the absolute max and was running too hot, and the bubble burst. Sort of like it was actually at nationals, and I wasn't on form for the rest of the season. I was just overly fatigued. So then third year I got it right, and from third year to, it took me 5.5 years for my degree. So from third year to 5.5, I kind of I had a good relationship with my academic counselors and was very proactive when it came to professors and advanced communication. So I found the magic mix for engineering was like 4 courses in the fall, 3 courses in the spring, and then the occasional, you could like mix in an occasional elective, which was like a non-work intensive elective. So that was a nice mix because then, yeah, I get my design courses and the math intensive and whatever hard courses out of the way in the fall, and then try to get like some more interesting ones that I was like passionate about in the spring that would be, so then I was able to split my time sort of like 60-40, 40-60. And that worked coming into those seasons. That would have been 2016 through 2019 season.
And at any point where you're like, I gotta put school on hold, I'm gonna just not drop out, but put on a pause and focus on the biking? Or was it like, I'm just gonna grind and just figure a way how to do this?
That happened after that second year fall.
Okay.
And that was kind of because I got too deep into that fall semester before I realized that, like, oh crap, like I can't train. Like, I'm not going to train this semester. Like, it's just not going to happen with how many courses I've taken. But I was so deep already and had enough success in those courses that I'm like, I don't want to redo any of this. Like, I've put 6 weeks in. Let's just grind the other 8 weeks out, and then we'll put school on pause, move to California for 4 months through January through April, race road, race mountain, do a bunch of training, take online courses so that I can like keep chipping away. But never come to like a full stop because sort of by the time Rio came around, so 2016 came around, I had worked backwards from Tokyo, and my margin of error was 0. If I had failed something, the whole plan was going to go to crap. But luckily that didn't happen. And yeah, I planned backwards, saying like, okay, yeah, like I'll still have 18 months to prep for this if I do this sort of magic 4 and 3, 3 and 2, 3 and 3, whatever near the end distribution. So yeah, and there were certain courses that, because I was in a very small program, I was in water resources engineering, so there was only like 50 of us in the graduating class. So yeah, because I was in a pretty small program, there were certain courses that were only offered in winter semesters, January to April semesters. So I just had to strategically plan around a few of those things, and the academic counselors were great. And the profs, I had one every year that was a problem, but everybody else was great. And yeah, I would just sort of reach out at the beginning of those like winter semesters, like in December, by the time enrolling for the next semester's classes would come around and be like, hey, I have racing in March. I will be away for an endurance camp in February, and I will be missing the entire exam period in April. Like, is that okay with you? And even if it isn't okay with you, I'm going to get good enough marks that I just won't show up to your exam and still pass your course. And that happened 3 times. So
nice.
Yeah.
It's funny, like the people probably listening here, you have the people who have gone through university and they know the process, what it takes, and then you have the sports people who do the sports. And like, I mean, trying to qualify for the Olympic Games, I know talking to these athletes, like they kid themselves not when they say eat, sleep, and train. Like, it is eat, sleep, and train, and you're on that schedule. So I mean, throw in university there, like it's crazy. Like, I did what you did, but at such a less stress level. I played a varsity sport at school, so it was like accommodating. I still had to like reduce my load and that kind of stuff, but nowhere to the extent that you're talking about here. So that's why I'm kind of laughing as you kind of describe your situation. And hopefully people listening, what you're talking, it seems like, okay, it's not too bad, but putting things in perspective, it's tough to do what you did, and very impressive, and kudos to you for getting it done.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, no, I didn't sleep, and like I failed a lot in terms of just like failing at workouts and failing at execution and failing at lifestyle, failing at social, like yeah, I failed a lot in the sort of life metrics. But I didn't fail any courses, and I always got myself to the start line and stuff, and those are the big metrics that I kept sort of measuring on. So yeah, it was tough, but it was tough, and I look back on it, and I not to like discourage people or whatnot, but yeah, I kind of figure I I stunted my development by about 2.5 years athletically. I think like by the time I was a final year under 23, I was in the top 10. Actually, I was in the top 5 World Cup overall. Right, I didn't do the last race just because it was in Italy, and then we had World Championships in Australia. It didn't make sense traveling from Canada. But I was top 5 overall in that last year under 23, and it's like I now look at sort of athletes who ran a similar course to me in terms of development, but then didn't go to school, and they're hitting those metrics second and third year under 23. So it's kind of like, yeah, I think that could have been that, but I'm also, from personality wise, very like constantly thinking, mentally active, slightly obsessive type person, and that exchange of like the 60% school, 40% training in the fall, and then flipping the other way around 40-60 in the spring, that was enough stimulus that when I hit a training camp in February, when reading week would happen in February, I'd do reading week plus a week. I'd miss another week of school, so I'd do 2 weeks of training. I think that was just some of the best miles I've ever put in, because it was time to go, and I knew that when I got back to school, it was going to be a midterm lab catch-up week, and it was flippity flop. But yeah, my rest weeks weren't rest weeks. My rest weeks were school weeks. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's funny, we'll kind of talk like the mental side of things through your sport and peak performance and that kind of stuff, but like you kind of talked about, it goes to show you like the mental side of things, which you're going through, going from school to training, and how set back you were versus someone who was just doing strictly competing. So you really show us the difference, but also you kind of touch on like finding a balance once again, right? And what works for you to, stay at a certain level when you're competing. So we'll dive even more into that as we progress the conversation here, but it's already evident that the importance of the mental game and how that affects your performance, how it affects your, the training cycle, right? You can't, you might not have trained at all, but mentally you've gone through a whole race because you were doing all your school stuff on the side. So it's cool that you bring it to light.
We'd attribute that to life load. So it's great when you can have TSS and chronic training loads and other metrics calculated by heart rate or power output or time or whatever derivation you want to use, but really hard to calculate like how much stress your body gets under in a midterms week, or like how much does a 2-hour endurance ride with 3x15 tempo, but then 6 hours of sleep and a 4-hour lab the next morning, how much is that equivalent to a 4-hour ride? And there's a lot of learning, and I got struck trout a lot, so yeah.
I like it too, because it's like you're going through it's all part of the story. That's what I love about the Olympic athletes. Like everyone has a story to tell, and this is just kind of the beginning for you. So you get to run through all this stuff, and it's part of the process and how you got to where you are and where you're going, of course. So I want to get into, you finished your university now, 2 feet in, you're good to go. But for those who don't know about your sport, can you kind of explain how the Olympic qualification goes for those who don't know?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll try to keep this as simple as possible. But there's two tiered, or they're not two tiered. There's 2 things working in parallel. So there is the federation spot qualification. So that is how many Canadians line up at the start line. And then there is the National Sport Organization Canadians versus Canadians who represents qualification. So 2 years out from the Olympics, the athlete quota qualification starts, essentially. And at that point, it is the 3 highest ranked individuals within a 12-month window. So because it's 2 years, it's not the same 3 individuals for the entire time. But within that first 12 months and within that second 12 months, the 3 highest ranked individuals cumulatively contribute UCI points, international race points. And then that first 12 months is summed, and then it's added to the next 12 months, and that's summed. And then top 2 federations, top 2 countries get 3 spots each. 3rd through 7th get 2 spots each. 8th through 21st get 1 spot each. And then there's a few wild cards that you can get one of those wild card spots. So yeah, so that's how you figure out how many Canadians are going to line up at the race. And then within Canada, the National Sport Organization criteria was essentially there's 4 priorities or 4 levels. Priority 1 being top 5 at World Championships, priority 2 being top 16 at a World Cup, priority 3 being for under 23 men and women, which was cool because that wasn't in Rio. This one's new for Tokyo. So if you got a podium as an under 23 at a World Cup, you were priority 3, and then priority 4 would be coach's choice discretionary. So for the first time in a few cycles, we had multiple men hit criteria. So that was great. So nobody hit priority 1. Nobody was top 5 at Worlds, but myself, Leander Bouchard, were priority 2. So we both got multiple top 16s, actually. I had a 6th place and an 11th place and a 19th place. That was outside of criteria. And then Dre had, if my memory serves, a 14th and a 12th. And then Sean Fincham and Carter Woods both hit the under 23 podium, priority 3 criteria, and then priority 4 was unnecessary because people had hit criteria above that. But unfortunately, as a federation, the top 3 points contributors in the first 12 months, 2 years out from the game, we actually did pretty well, and we were ranked pretty high. But then in the second 12-month cumulative contribution, other countries really stepped it up, and we slid outside of that top 10. And our hopes of clinching that 7th place in the nation's ranking in order to have 2 people line up was thwarted. So that's in a nutshell how it works. It's pretty much identical for men and women. So yeah, the women were within that top 7, so they had 2 spots, and the men were not, so we had 1 spot. Yeah.
And for Canada in man biking, are you guys as a country, are we like
the Swiss dominate?
Sorry, say it again.
The Swiss dominate.
Okay, so where do we fall?
Yeah.
Like, are we still pretty new and still learning how to get up? Like, are we up towards the bottom because we just haven't brought enough?
Watched, spectated, driven past, or whatever, like a Canadian national championships. There's, if we're lucky, like 500, 600 spectators. There's 30 people in each category. Bing, bang, boom type idea. And then you witness like the Czech Republic national championships, and there's 80 people in each category. There's 5,000 spectators. It's televised. It's their mainstream sport, or like substream sport. Yeah. So there's definitely just a different culture with like bike racing stuff. Like this is a complete sidebar, but because of COVID restrictions and quarantine restrictions returning back to Canada last year, we ended up spending like 5 months in Europe. So we ended up doing all of our sort of in-between World Cup racing in Europe, going to French Cups and Italian Cups and whatever. And yeah, we show up to a French Cup, and they don't have one cadet race. Cadet is 15 and 16-year-olds. They don't have one cadet race. They have two cadet races because there's too many kids.
Too many kids, yeah.
Yeah. So they
Wow,
have
that's crazy.
two cadet races of 100 kids apiece. and then 100 kids apiece. So that's whatever, 215 and 16-year-olds. Well, that's 215 and 16-year-olds with parents and other family members
Yeah.
in camper trailers taking up 3 acres of farm field because they would just, and that's the base of the triangle that the
Gotcha.
French are working with. So
Gotcha.
yeah, you can see why they're good. Yeah.
Is it growing here in Canada slowly, you find, or it's kind of just stagnant right now? You got some guys some years, some guys you don't. Just
I mean, yeah, there's always a bit of cream that like rises to the top. There's always sort of like a phenom that comes through type idea. But and then if that athlete has success at like an international level and gets some support, then sticking with it and sort of following it through and striving for like what the development potential is becomes a little bit more of a viable option. But I mean, yeah, growing up in Ontario, we had the Ontario Cycling Association, we had Ontario Cup races, we had the local hardwood Wednesday night races that we started at. And there's a solid amount of community in that Southern Ontario scene. And then moving to BC, there's not as much. And it's actually quite challenging now with some of the like younger athletes in the area that I'm mentoring and stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, just go do. I'm like, oh, that doesn't exist here. So like, oh, just go do. And like, so yeah, opportunities and whatnot are still not even keeled, and that's pretty solid across the board. Like the powerhouses of Canadian cycling are Quebec and Ontario, and then not the odd, but Quebec, Ontario, and then select athletes out of BC, unless it's gravity. If it's gravity mountain biking, then everybody comes out of BC. But yeah, so it's definitely got room to grow, but there's a lot of new sort of like promising restructuring and stuff that's happening right now that hopefully promotes a bit more of that.
nice.
But it's a big country. At the same time, we have to remember that like that French Cup that I mentioned in that sidebar, like that at worst is a 10-hour drive for somebody.
Oh wow.
So that's when we were cadets and juniors, like we would jump in the car and drive to Canada Cup in Tremblant and Mont Tremblant in Quebec, but like would not consider hopping on a plane and flying to the Canada Cup in Canmore, Alberta.
Yeah.
And it's hard, like even with some of the athletes that I help out with and coach a little bit and whatnot, like it's hard talking to them and being like, oh, like, do I have to fly to Quebec 3 times this year?
Yeah.
Like, well, if you want to race, yeah. Like that's kind of the unfortunate part of living outside of the Quebec, Ontario scene, is that's where the big powerhouse and competitive races are.
Gotcha.
Anyway, a bit of a sidebar. I'm not painting a very clear picture, but it's enough of a picture to say like
where we stand and stuff. Yeah.
Still some growth. Yeah. So we're a big country, and that's just part of it. Yeah.
Well, it's good to hear. Well, the fact it's in the Olympics says a lot in itself, right? So that's good to hear. So I kind of want to jump into first I want your process, your 4-year process to get there. Like I know you kind of touched on it a bit. You're like you had to have a perfect plan. It had to go smooth, and thank God it went smooth. So just talk lightly about that process, and then just qualifying for the Olympics, and then we'll get into the competing and the fun stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So, 4 years out, I'm 3rd year in my undergrad. Yeah, 3rd-ish year. So didn't think so much, wasn't so much to do with 4 years out. because I was still under 23, so I couldn't qualify for Rio. I watched Rio happen, and I was sort of looking at the gap between myself and those Olympians,
Yeah.
and being like, yeah, like I'm the next one on the conveyor belt type idea.
Yeah.
Like of the age group, the up and comers were still, the whippersnappers were still a little bit young. I mean, they're really fast now, and going to be quite a piece of competition for Paris. But yeah, sort of the cohort that I went through, like dive into and make happen. So, under 23 started out in elite, and the plan to start up in elite was to not just roll over and die. Like you're in with the big leagues now, you're doing the full 90-minute race. Like it's time to go, but it doesn't mean we still can't be competitive. And I climbed my way through the ranks with that. And then the school plan was the other big plan, was make sure I have full winter and reduced course loads and more time for training leading into Tokyo, and not just the winter before, but like 2 winters before, because we do a lot of our work through December through March. That's where most of your success will come from, is those months. And then like into the last 3 semesters in my degree, so fall of 2017, fall of 2018, the script had flipped. Like I very actively and consciously started putting school on the back burner. If I had a 5-hour ride that day and I skipped 2 classes, I skipped 2 classes. If I had a training camp that I thought was going to be a little bit more make or break, I literally would walk in and I told the professors, like, I'm not coming to your midterm.
Yeah.
Like, I will not be here. Either we can like help to do a deferral thing, or like allow me to write it on the road with an invigilator, but like this is important to me and I'm going to do this. And I mean, it worked because I was fortunate enough to have pretty good grades a lot of the time, so I could play a little bit of hardball with that and either have my bluff called or but then leading into Tokyo, or rather into the 2018 was kind of a standard season, but then 2019 was the like, okay, now we got to qualify season. And I just nailed it. Like I finished school at the end of 2018. I had really good prep through the beginning of 2019. My girlfriend at the time, now my fiance, was on board, and it was super fortunate that she was going through a post grad. She was going through veterinary school, so she was busy enough as it was. So I was like, I'm gonna leave for 2 months and go train and make this happen. And got the support from that side. Had the support from my team. My parents were supportive, but not as hands-on as they once were through our development years. And with not having school, with all of a sudden being free of school at the beginning of 2019, all of a sudden I was like, holy crap, like I'm going to race these races in Greece in February. I'm going to race like something obscene in March. I'm going to get a bunch of training in April. I'm going to go to altitude here. I'm going to do this. And I'm going to move to BC for the summer. And it all just like cascaded and all sort of fell in place, and was all really fresh compared to the grind of trying to balance university with it. And I was really motivated and really hyped on the fact that I like wasn't in school. So all of a sudden, all the things that I let slip, because I was when I was balancing it with school, it was very meat and potatoes. It was like, do the ride, do your work. And now it was like, okay, sick, I can do my ride. I can roll and stretch, I can do core, I can clean my bike,
Yeah.
I can like do all the other things that are actually going to add up to a percent or two.
Yeah.
And I started to see the rewards or see the results on the track, and I was flying come like mid-June, and we were doing some domestic races, and they were just like, I was loaded from an endurance block, and I was just doing the races. There were Canada Cup races in Canmore and Whistler. And I was just doing them for intensity and did those and went to Europe, and all of a sudden cut the training load, started to get the peak, and banged off. I was riding around in 9th place, and then in the last 5 minutes of the race, lost 2 spots, placed 11th, hit that priority 2 qualification, and then the week immediately after, I, without that sort of, let's say, conservative pressure of like, okay, like you're in that top 16, like hold the top 16 type idea. Without that, like I was like, I've already hit qualies, so let's just see what will happen. And my coach was leading. He's like, if you think you're gonna blow up, go a little bit harder and see what happens. He's like, you've hit qualifications, just see what happens. And I raced that World Cup in Leger, France. Like I was going to explode from lap 2 through lap 7. And I, by the skin of my teeth, did not blow up and placed 6th. And yeah, it's my best World Cup result. And it was the one that was like pretty set in stone of, there's probably no chance that this is going to be beaten, and I probably am now going to go to Tokyo because of it. So that's cool.
That's unreal.
And then the rest of the season wasn't like I popped or fizzled out. It was, the rest of the season was pretty good still. I was top 20 overall in the World Cup standing that year. Won nationals, raced until November 3rd. Had a really bad accident in October, which kind of upset things, but it was October, so it wasn't too concerned. And then recovered from that accident by like mid-December, being mindful of the fact that I had a huge season, took a little bit more rest.
Yeah.
Wasn't in school. My fiance was still in school. So spent as much time with her sort of like throughout the fall as I could. And then starting into 2020, I mean, in terms of like cyclic loading through a quad, like it didn't have to have that like massive off season. So yeah, really started to pound the pedals and hit some of that speed work early. And come mid-February, I was in Girona, Spain, with the Ontario Cycling Associations actually. So that was super cool that the OCA, who had been the first organization and first community, like high performance community, to invite me into projects when I was like 14, 15, then invited me back in sort of like a mentor role.
Oh, nice.
Leading into Tokyo. And that was like immeasurably like exciting and motivating, because now all of a sudden I was spending time with like mini me's, like the kids who were stoked to ride, were like unbelievably excited to be in Spain riding road bikes. And I'm like, yeah, like we went to South Carolina when I was your age. Like you guys are in Spain right now. Like what the heck?
That's unreal, yeah.
Yeah, and they were just pumped, and I was like stupid fit, and I would ride the front and the kids would draft, and I would ride the front for 6 hours and they would draft, and occasionally one would come up and like try to ride beside me, and then I just like keep riding until he's like, okay, I'm right back into the draft. Okay. And yeah, I was doing efforts, and I was doing a lot of speed work, and I was doing it by myself, but like with the group of kids. So I'd be like, okay, like we'd start climbing, then it'd be an hour-long climb, I'm like, I'm gonna do my whatever 3x15 up it, and I'll just keep looping back, and like, and then we'll all meet up at the top, and then we'll go home after that. And yeah, like it was a really good scene, really good environment, really empowering, humbling, but also really confidence building. And I was posting personal bests in power numbers and power profiles and lactate values and stuff like that I hadn't set PBs since before like 2015. And now all of a sudden, spring of 2020, I'm shattering those. I'm like, oh, holy crap, this is the absolute best time this could possibly happen. And yeah, we were slated to start racing in maybe late March. Yeah, I think late March in California. Yeah, actually it was late March in California, because I came back from Girona, came back from Spain at the end of February as COVID was kind of breaking out in Europe. And then we actually flew to California, lined up, did one short track race on the Friday night, and then between 7 o'clock when that race, like it's an evening 20-minute race, between when that race ended and 24 hours, we were on planes home type idea, because everything was getting shut down and locked down. So yeah, that was all of a sudden the thrilling, screeching halt end of the 2020 season, before it even began. And yeah, I remember March being really tough. March 2020, end of March, beginning of April being really tough, because we get news one day that like the Olympics would not be postponed, they would be canceled. And then we get news the next day that like Team Canada has announced that they'll officially boycott the Olympics if they go ahead as planned. And then we get news the day, and then like I do like 2 interviews or whatever as the top prospect of like, how do you feel about all this? And then 2 days later it'd be like, oh, actually it is going to get postponed, but like if it has to be postponed a second time, they'll just cancel it or whatever. So it was like a ton of volatility, a ton of emotional investment, a ton of like riding a really high, really confident high of like, I'd never felt so sure of myself. Like I was really good from a piloting perspective. I was really good from a fitness perspective. Everything had slotted into place. Like 2015, middle of third year, me was like stoked that like, holy crap, like the plan worked.
Yeah.
Like do everything now. Like you have time. Like we struggled through second year fluid dynamics so that you would have this 4 months with no school to like focus on this, like do everything and do it all right, to then all of a sudden just like nothing. So
Crazy.
yeah, I mean, yeah, and then sort of like we can talk about the sort of COVID and then COVID ramp up back into it, but like the ramp up was nowhere near as exciting as the lead up to that sort of February.
That's quite a roller coaster you went on, from, like you said, being at school to, you know, hitting your personal best, just riding a big high, to obviously COVID putting in a standstill. Like,
yeah,
I mean, that's emotional roller coaster if I've ever heard one, and I'm sure other athletes were obviously going through the same. But being your first Olympics, you want to keep that high going to a certain extent, and making sure you're at your peak when, you know, push comes to shove for your ride. So obviously the Olympics happened. Mentally, physically, when you got there, how are you feeling?
Yeah. So I mean, so we did end up actually racing in 2020.
Okay.
We had a very pseudo condensed World Cup season in September, October, and it was shit. it was not great. The whole 2020 year, like there was just kind of a rolling 6-week cancellation window. So we'd train, and we'd start doing speed work, and then we'd hear that the next World Cup in August had been canceled. So it was like, okay, well, now what? So by the time that came around, it was real just on fumes, just getting kicked in the teeth type idea. And like you saw it sort of throughout the whole, like we were in Europe for like 6 weeks. So you saw it sort of throughout the trip. Like I started off half decent, and then just I was so far gone at that point, I couldn't maintain. So that was in contrast to like 2019 season, and like even 2019, like the Olympic test event and how that had gone leading into what 2020 was supposed to be. Like, yeah, that was a huge kick in the confidence. So 2021 rolls around. 2021 promises to be a little bit more normal, a little bit more predictable, but the sort of beginning US Cups and Canada Cup races that like we typically race in California in like March and April. We get they're really hard racing. Like they're hard to win. But you're racing. You're like in the front. You're in the top 5. You're actively in the mix, and it's with buddies that speak English and that and whatever. And yeah, 2021 turned into yep, we don't get any of that. No North American racing. I mean, there was some racing in Arkansas, but we were already in Europe at that point. So we started off with some Italian Cups and some whatever, and it was really hard to sort of get that mojo, get that confidence back from that 2020 kick in the teeth, and just a lot of emotional roller coastering. So there's so much emotional elasticity that, I mean, I just kind of numbed out, because we'd get hyped about one thing, and we'd get like sure and be like, okay, yep, like that's where I'm gonna like make a mark, and we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, and yeah, it just didn't. It was just hard to materialize and hard to sort of keep. Like you just kept your foot on the gas the entire time, but then at some point your foot just got tired, you know. I mean, there were other things. I had some health issues at the beginning of 2021 as well. I got like stupid sick for like all of January.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I ended up getting a blood clot in my leg because I was in bed, just at like a resting heart rate of like 95 at 4 a.m.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was super cool, and like insanely volatile as well. Like where at the beginning of 2021, I've now lost one of my like major endurance months, and I'm being told I'm going on blood thinners. So I'm like, well, I'm not mountain biking. Like I'm going to concede my spot. If the moment you hit me with blood thinners, I'm conceding my spot, because I'm not mountain biking. I'm going to die if I hit the ground. And the doctors I was working with were actually pretty cool. They're like, okay, well, like you're not overweight, you are fit, and you're young. So just come back in like a week, and we'll see if your blood clot's like looking any better. And sure enough, it was. So they just sent me on my way, and I'm like, okay.
Dodge the bullet.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, cool. So like just like that elasticity of just like trying to keep it going. But yeah, when push finally came to shove, and it was also there was also that sort of conscious logic side of like the other athletes are trying to take my spot. Because Cycling Canada had allowed some of the 2021 World Cups to become qualifying races, because there had been such a gap since the 2019 season. And while they're actively hitting their best form to try to take that spot up, I'm not on my best form, because I'm trying to peak in July. So there was a bit of just some mind games going on, intentional and unintentional. So yeah, it was a lot of just sort of like try to stay true, try to stay as good, but then also kind of like walking the line of that emotional elasticity and try not to get too knocked off keel at any point. But once we actually like fast forward, once we actually like got to Tokyo and the preparation camps leading in and all that, like I was very, not very confident, but I was sure of myself and content with, you know what, no, I'm the best option right now. There might be like a faster, younger athlete, but they don't have the experience and the confidence and calmness on the world stage that I do. There's another athlete in similar age group, but like we are the same speed right now. So I'm confident that I'm the best choice because I was at the test event and had a good season, or had a good smash at it then and stuff like that. So by the time like I actually lined up at the start line, I was like, yep, this is right, and I feel like ethically sound in the process. Like I'm the one to do this. And yeah, I took that energy and went with it and made a few mistakes, but like mountain biking is mountain biking, man. Like it's not a controlled environment. Like it's anybody's game. So yeah, it was a good time.
That's awesome to hear. Even being a young guy and having that confidence, being in your first Olympics is pretty impressive, considering the journey you went on. And I was going to dive into a little bit more, in-game mental stuff, but I kind of want to, like, you kind of took us through an emotional, mental journey that you went on. And I think you gave us a different perspective that I usually get from athletes, because we hone in a little bit more on, game day mindset and preparation. But with the Olympics, it's such a special sport because it's a 4-year process, an 8-year process, wherever that journey starts for you. And you're going through these emotions of, high stress, injuries, your case going through school. There's just so much aspects to it. And then push comes to shove, like you're talking about the elasticity there. You're at the start line of the Olympic Games representing Team Canada, like all that blood, sweat, tears, emotion stuff. It's like, it's all worth it. It came through. So I kind of like the stuff you're hinting on, just from a different point of view and more through, like you said, the process that it took to get there. And your journey's a little bit different through what you went through.
Yeah, and sort of the like in race stuff and in day stuff. I really stuck to my guns of like, it's a bike race. Like I'm a bike racer. It's a bike race. There's not much to it. We go around in circles and we ride really hard. Like, you go down rocks and you go through dust and you hop over roots and go off jumps. Like it's all the same essentially. And really stuck to my guns with that, because that was what, like, ever since I was a junior, when I'm in South Africa and I'm lined up on the front line because I'm ranked 7th in the world and I'm a medal favorite, and it's like, this feels like a Wednesday night race at Hardwood. And that's where we started, and here we go. So it was definitely nice to sort of go through that process and all of that uncertainty and all that emotional elasticity and all of that grind through school and preparation and plan execution to then get to the start line and then just dial it back fully to the simplistic basics of, this is a bike race. Let's have a good ride, and here we go.
That's awesome. I think, and I'm a big advocate in, hitting flow state where, you're just not thinking anymore and you're going. And I think part of getting into those states is, the mindset going in or prepping to go in, where it's like you said, I've been doing this for years. It's just another race. Let my body, mind, the unconscious stuff just take over. And, where I end up. And that's, I think, all part of the Olympic Games.
Yeah, no, it was a blast. I had a good time for sure.
That's awesome. That's exciting stuff. Well, Peter, I appreciate you coming on board here to chat and taking some time here. So gonna wish you luck in your training sessions. And from talking, it seems like you're gonna probably push for the next Summer Olympic Games 2024, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, we alluded to, and we went through the whole Tokyo process, but there's that itching inside me where a lot happened, a lot changed leading into that, and I've got more, and I want another I want another kick at it because